a bouquet of fresh lilies and 2 first-class tickets to Paris. It was Valentine's Day, and I couldn't wait to see my husband's face. But as I stepped inside, the entire company was cheering. Gold confetti rained down on the showroom floor, and there he was, my husband, holding up a flawless diamond ring, kissing the gorgeous female CEO. The crowd erupted into applause as she whispered, "Yes." My heart didn't break. It went entirely cold. I didn't cause a scene. I turned around, walked out, and immediately canceled our trip. Within 20 minutes, I froze all our joint accounts and pulled exactly $558 million. 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with 152 missed calls. And then my doorbell rang. Follow my story to see what happened next. They say that the quietest people often carry the heaviest keys. My name is Violet. I am 31 years old, and for the last 7 years of my life, I have lived a double identity that not even my own husband suspected. To Julian, and to everyone in our immediate social circle, I was the picture-perfect, supportive, and entirely modest housewife. I spent my days organizing our beautiful suburban home, planning gourmet dinners, and ensuring that Julian's life ran with absolute, flawless precision. When he came home exhausted from his grueling executive hours at a rapidly growing tech firm, I was always there at the door to take his coat, hand him a drink, and listen intently to his grand corporate ambitions. I chose this quiet lifestyle willingly because I loved him, and more importantly, because I wanted to protect something incredibly massive. The world saw Julian as the brilliant, rising star of the corporate ladder, but they didn't know the real architect behind his success. The truth is, I am not just a housewife. I am the anonymous majority angel investor who built that very tech firm from the ground up, holding a strict 83% controlling stake in the entire company. I intentionally hid my multi-million-dollar financial empire behind layered shell companies and trusted legal proxies for one simple, deeply personal reason. I wanted to ensure that Julian loved me for exactly who I was as a person, and not for the astronomical wealth attached to my name. I wanted a real, genuine marriage built on love, mutual respect, and driven by greed. For years, I watched him thrive in the empire I quietly funded, completely unaware that his gentle, unassuming wife held his entire destiny in her hands. Valentine's Day was supposed to be the milestone where I finally revealed everything. I had spent weeks planning the ultimate romantic getaway, secretly purchasing 2 first-class tickets to Paris and booking a private villa overlooking the Seine. I kept imagining the look of pure shock and joy on Julian's face when I handed him the luxury itinerary and told him that his days of corporate stress were over because his wife could buy the entire skyline. Clutching a beautiful, fragrant bouquet of fresh lilies, I decided to bypass our usual evening routine and surprise him directly at the corporate headquarters. As I stepped through the grand glass doors of the high-rise office building, the usual quiet, professional hum of the showroom floor was completely gone. Instead, the air was thick with excitement, and a loud, festive cheer echoed down the main corridor. I walked deeper into the building, my heart fluttering with anticipation, thinking the company was perhaps celebrating a major quarterly victory. But as I rounded the corner into the central atrium, my breath caught in my throat. Gold confetti was raining down from the balconies, and the entire staff stood in a massive circle, clapping wildly. In the center of it all was Julian. He was down on one knee, holding a velvet box containing a flawless, blinding diamond ring. Standing directly in front of him was Victoria, the gorgeous, high-profile female CEO whom I had personally hired to run the company's daily operations. Before I could even process what I was seeing, Julian stood up, slipped the ring onto her finger, and pulled her into a passionate kiss as she loudly whispered "yes" into the microphone. There is a strange, terrifying clarity that settles over your mind when a betrayal is so absolute it completely burns away your capacity for grief. In that shattering moment, I didn't cry, my hands didn't shake, and I felt no urge to scream or cause a public scene. The crushing heartbreak I should have felt was instantly replaced by a wave of pure, clinical logic. I looked at my husband of 7 years celebrating his new life with the woman I paid to manage my company, and I calmly turned around. I walked back into the lobby, dropped the beautiful bouquet of lilies into the trash bin, and exited the building without a single person noticing I had ever been there. The moment I sat in the quiet sanctuary of my car, I pulled out my laptop and let my corporate instincts take complete control. I immediately canceled the first-class Paris vacation, clawing back every single dollar from the luxury bookings. Next, I called my primary asset managers and issued a series of sweeping, irreversible commands. With a few precise keystrokes, I froze all the joint bank accounts that Julian relied on to fund his expensive suits, luxury car payments, and high-end lifestyle. Finally, I initiated the nuclear option. I officially triggered the immediate, total liquidation and withdrawal of the firm. My legal proxies went to work instantly, moving the massive equity, worth exactly $558 million, completely out of the corporate accounts and into my secure personal holdings. Within a matter of minutes, I systematically stripped Julian of his financial safety net, his lifestyle, and the very foundation of the company he thought he was about to rule. The sudden, catastrophic withdrawal of an 83% controlling stake hits a tech firm like a sudden cardiac arrest. Back at the headquarters, the joyous engagement celebration ground to a screeching, terrified halt within 15 minutes. As my legal proxies executed the massive liquidation of my $558 million in corporate equity, the company's internal financial alarms began to blare. The sudden loss of their primary funding source caused the company's valuation to plummet instantly into a freefall, triggering immediate panic among the board members and institutional investors. The glittering showroom floor, which had just been covered in gold confetti and romantic promises, quickly transformed into a war room of shouting executives and frantic phone calls. Julian and Victoria stood in the center of the chaos, completely blindsided as their entire world collapsed beneath their feet. They had no idea that the anonymous billionaire investor who had just pulled the plug on their entire future was actually the quiet woman Julian left at home. As the reality set in that the firm was facing immediate bankruptcy, Julian frantically grabbed his phone, trying to scramble for a solution. Meanwhile, I arrived back at our quiet, empty suburban home. I kicked off my shoes, poured myself a calm glass of wine, and sat down on the sofa. I placed my phone on the coffee table and watched it come alive. The screen lit up continuously, a relentless, flashing beacon of desperation. Julian was calling me over and over again, his name flashing across the dark screen like a plea for mercy. By the time I finally turned the screen face down, he had left exactly 152 missed calls in a matter of minutes. The heavy silence of the house was suddenly shattered by the violent, echoing ring of the doorbell. I didn't jump or rush to the door. I slowly set down my wine glass, smoothed my clothes, and walked over with measured steps. When I opened it, I found Julian standing on the porch, looking absolutely breathless and unraveled. His tie was completely undone, his hair was a messy ruin, and he was still wearing the exact same designer suit he had put on to propose to a CEO. He looked terrified, like a man who had just seen his entire future vanish into thin air. He immediately pushed past me into the hallway, his voice shaking with a desperate, synthetic warmth. "Violet, thank goodness you're home. Something impossible has happened. The company's accounts have been completely wiped out, and my personal cards are totally frozen. I don't understand what's going on." He gripped my shoulders, trying to gaslight me with a practiced, frantic lie. "Listen to me. Whatever you might hear on the news about tonight, it was all just a corporate publicity stunt. Victoria and I staged that proposal to secure a massive new tech merger and save the business. It meant nothing, I swear. I only love you." I stood completely still, looking into his eyes, watching him scramble to protect his lifestyle. I waited for a beat, letting the silence stretch between us before I calmly dropped the ultimate bombshell. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the official liquidation paperwork, and handed it to him. "It wasn't a publicity stunt, Julian," I whispered, my voice ice cold. "And the anonymous investor who just broke your company isn't a stranger. It's me. I own 83% of your firm, and I just took my $558 million back." The arrogant corporate prince collapsed onto his knees right there on our hardwood floor, the reality of my words hitting him like a physical blow. Julian stared at the official liquidation papers in his trembling hands, watching his life's ambitions completely dissolve. He began to beg, his voice cracking with a frantic desperation as he realized he had traded a multi-millionaire empire builder for a sinking ship. He promised to fix everything, to leave Victoria, and to spend the rest of his life making it up to me. But I simply looked down at him with nothing but cold indifference. The ripple effect of my move didn't stop at our front door. Across town, the news of the company's sudden bankruptcy spread like wildfire. Victoria, the elite, calculated CEO, didn't waste a single moment mourning her engagement. The very second her financial advisors confirmed that the corporate treasury was completely dry and that Julian's personal accounts were entirely frozen, her artificial love evaporated. She didn't care about a man without a title. She cared about survival. She ruthlessly locked Julian out of the corporate servers and dumped him via a cold, one-line text message before fleeing the state to avoid the oncoming wave of furious board members and aggressive creditors. With the company completely ruined, I unleashed my final, devastating countermove. My high-powered legal team initiated swift, aggressive divorce proceedings the very next morning. Because I had kept my entire financial empire completely separate through airtight premarital corporate holdings and layered trusts, Julian had absolutely no legal claim to a single penny of my wealth. He was left with nothing but his rapidly mounting personal debts, a ruined reputation, and the crushing knowledge of exactly what he had thrown away. 3 months later, I am sitting on the terrace of my beautiful new luxury penthouse, watching the sun set over a sprawling city skyline that I now partially own. Getting rid of the dead weight in my life was the most liberating decision I have ever made, and I am finally living completely on my own terms. Now, I'm deeply curious about all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. If you suddenly discovered that your partner was shamelessly using you for your status while secretly chasing someone else behind your back, would you have walked away silently to plan your revenge like I did? Or would you have made a massive scene